Hello and welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm John Bachman. Joining me right now via Skype is Brandon Webb. He is a former Navy SEAL and wrote the book Benghazi, The Definitive Report. He also runs the website softrep.com. Brandon, thanks for being with us.
Always a pleasure.
All right, so Benghazi is the crux of this interview, and as we mark the one-year anniversary of the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Brandon's friend, best friend, of course, Glen Doherty, was one of the 4 Americans killed in that attack, along with Ambassador Chris Stevens, Ty Woods, and Sean Smith. Brandon, I know today is a very tough day for you, so I want to just thank you again for being with us. And so here we are now, 1 year later. Today, a car bomb exploded in Benghazi, Libya, exactly 1 year after that attack on the diplomatic mission there. Wednesday's bombing targeted a building that once housed the U.S. consulate more than 4 decades ago. It's currently the site of the Libyan Foreign Ministry in the center of Benghazi. And Libyans say that Benghazi has not been the same since that attack 1 year ago. What was your reaction when you found out about the bombing today?
Well, I can't say I'm surprised. You know, it's one of the things that I've spoken to in the past, just about the American foreign policy and really the fact that we need to really reshape and think about how we conduct our foreign policy and how we promote American diplomacy abroad. And you know, and Benghazi is a case study in American foreign policy that's lost its path. And you see now situations like we have developing in Syria where, you know, as much as the Assad regime probably needs to go, it's what happens next. And that's what happened in Libya when you topple Gaddafi, and it's what next. It's this void and chaos right now, and you know, bordering on a civil war in itself.
Yeah, Syria's kind of taken you know, the air out of the whole entire situation, and everybody, of course, is focusing on that. And we have not heard as much about Benghazi, particularly these last couple of weeks. But, you know, we look back at the particular case here. This has been investigated by the FBI and the CIA. The Justice Department has indicted suspects, including a man named Ahmed Khattala, for murder. And according to the New York Times, intelligence officials know his whereabouts, or, you know, basically where he's been. We've seen him in other interviews with CNN and other media outlets as well. And there have even been reports of specific military plans to go into Libya and snatch up Khattala and the other suspects. But still, none of these militants, even though we think we know who they are, have been brought to justice. How do you feel about that 1 year later?
Well, I think it just shows you that, you know, that we have problems that need to be fixed within these different agencies. You know, you talk about the investigation that's ongoing. Our sources within the State Department and FBI said a lot of the FBI's work is getting blocked by the State Department. They're receiving documents with pages of redacted notes, so that the cooperation just isn't where it should be. It doesn't seem like these American, you know, agencies are working very well together to bring some type of conclusion to Benghazi. And again, I point to Syria and what's going on over there now. And we really need to get our act together and figure out what we're doing in the world, because we are a world power and a world leader. There's no denying that. But we need to really rethink the way we do business.
Yeah, changes obviously need to be made. Benghazi is a clear example of that. Let's talk a little bit, if we can, about what, you know, an operation might look like. I know you have contacts at the State Department. You also have contacts at JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command. And there's been some of these reports that a quote-unquote target package exists. So what would that look like? Let's say, you know, if the U.S. were to go into Libya, which is still like the wild, wild west right now, and try to get some of these suspects. Do you think that's a viable strategy?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's, you know, JSOC works very differently, obviously, than the FBI. We know for a fact that JSOC is on the ground in Libya, and they are executing target lists. Whether or not the targets on that list are related to the Benghazi attack, I can't answer. But we do know.
And it further begs the question, you know, if they're already on the ground, why aren't these specific, you know, suspects that have been identified? We're talking about it here. It's obviously not secretive information. Why haven't these people been taken into custody? And, you know, to that point, we heard just this last weekend from the White House Chief of Staff, Dennis McDonough, on Fox News Sunday, talking with Chris Wallace, and he said that the U.S. will find Khattala and the others responsible. I'm going to play a clip right now of what specifically McDonough said.
There's been no arrest, while at the same time, Khattala has given interviews to CNN, to AP, and to the New York Times. Why is it that reporters seem to be able to find this guy who the government is charging for involvement in Benghazi, but our law enforcement can't find him?
Look, we've been very clear that we will hold those people who carried out this dastardly, heinous attack against our people
It's
to
been a year,
account.
sir.
It has been a year, and you know what the United States does, Chris? Is we track every lead until we find and can accomplish what we say we will do.
You know, I'm sure you've seen that clip, Brandon. What do you think, about that? It's a year. Does that just sound like lip service to you?
I mean, I think that the president legitimately wants to bring these people to justice. We've, as much as he's the commander in chief and has some blame to what happened within the State Department, I personally, I find it disturbing that we can't police up our own within the State Department. And I go back to Patrick Kennedy, the Undersecretary of Management. This is a guy that was explaining away failed or denied security requests in the 1998 Africa U.S. Embassy bombing. So if anyone should know better and have him being in that position, it should have been Patrick Kennedy. And he denied or wavered around these security requests and left his people hanging. And why aren't we holding our own people accountable, as well as trying to bring the folks that were responsible to justice as well?
And I'll follow up on that point in just a second, but let's get back to this bombing that happened on the one-year anniversary, Wednesday, September 11, 2013. The Libyan government, this clearly shows that they failed to gain control even after the Arab Spring here of this portion of the country, which includes Benghazi. Even if it did have control of the area, the Libyan government is still reluctant to help the U.S. Because these suspects are tribal leaders in the area, and they carry some weight with the village people and the people living around them. So without the possibility of Libyan cooperation, do you see that any way the U.S. would go in unilaterally to pick up these suspects?
Yeah, I don't think the U.S. is afraid to, especially JSOC, afraid to operate unilaterally in Libya whatsoever. I believe they're doing so as we speak, so I don't see that as an issue.
Before this summer recess, there was some momentum building in Congress towards creating a special select committee to investigate the American response to the attack. But I want to ask you, what is more important to you, and this kind of follows up what we were talking about just a moment ago, what's more important to you? I know you'd like to have both of these scenarios happen, but out of the two, would it be more important for you that people like Patrick Kennedy, who you say bears the responsibility for this, are held to account, or would it be, if you only had a choice of one, would you rather see these militants brought to justice?
It may come or sound surprising, but I personally would rather see us clean up our own house, because the problem is it's business. It's back to business as usual in the State Department, and it puts further American lives at risk. And so let's clean up the problems at state. Booz Allen Hamilton did a report in 1999 after the African embassy bombings, and they made a list of suggestions that, surprisingly, this independent report that came out recently conducted, on the State Department, the same recommendations that Booz Allen made back in 1999. This independent report is now making that diplomatic security needs their own undersecretary position. They need their own dedicated training venues. And so it just, again, everyone that we've spoken to at the State Department, and there's a lot of great people there and American patriots, but all roads seem to lead back to Kennedy, and just his negligence just can't be ignored, in my opinion. And he's getting a free pass. It's really too bad that, and nobody, who has been held accountable at the Department of State for what happened there? It's terrible.
Nobody has, and everybody who was initially cited for this has returned back to work, and they're going about their business, as you said. And you also brought up the point of Syria, and we cannot forget about Benghazi, because, as you mentioned, this points out the kind of what next question. There needs to be a full holistic strategy on what to do when a government does fall, as it did in Libya. Obviously, and based on what we learned Wednesday from this recent bombing, still a very dangerous situation. Brandon Webb, I want to thank you very much, of course, for your military service, for everything you've done for your country, and want to honor your best friend Glen Doherty here on the one-year anniversary of his death, as well as the 3 others who died in Benghazi. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking with you as always.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate it.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.